A lot of the reasons why I did any of these things is because it looked hard. And I know doing things that are hard make you a better person and make you more resilient and make you more able to handle other difficult things. So when I saw them doing roast battle, and my first thought was, I can't do that. My next thought was, I better figure out a way to do that. Otherwise, I'll regret it. I'll regret never trying.
Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. Not jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. With Rudy Tyburczy. I'm stoked to be here today with my good friend, longtime friend, Albert Escobedo. Hi, Albert. Say hi to the people.
Hi, people. How's it going, everybody? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Albert has done a lot of comedy and podcasting and exercising in his life. So I was super excited that he wanted to be on the podcast. So, where are you located these days, Albert?
Right now, I live in Santa Rosa, California, which is in the Bay Area, Northern California area, about an hour north of San Francisco. I've been here for 10 months only, so pretty new to this area, this region. Never spent much time up here, but not too far from that Oregon border.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't know you were in Northern California. Okay, nice. That's so awesome. Albert, can you tell me a little bit about your comedy backstory? We started together. We know each other from Korea. We were both living in Seoul, South Korea as English teachers getting drunk on Wednesdays. Tell it. Yeah, but you started before that. What's the history of your comedy like?
Yeah, it's actually not too long before Korea. Before Korea, I had tried stand-up at college. In college, I did what they call it, like a talent show. I had done a set, and it was 10 minutes, and it was in front of an audience of like 400 people, and I was just a big Dave Chappelle fan. I was watching Dave Chappelle specials like on DVD over and over again, like on repeat, memorizing the jokes, and going through that with a lot of other people. It was the Dave Chappelle era. And that led me to being in a room full of people that encouraged me to keep doing it, because the ones that I had went pretty well. And, that's difficult, 10 minutes in front of a lot of people on your first time. And I still have the recording. It wasn't good, but I got some laughs, I got some laughs. And it wasn't horrible enough that people encouraged me to try again. So then I went and started doing open mics. But the comedy club was called The Laughing Post. It was in Kalamazoo, Michigan. So it was like 3 hours away, and they only did it once a month. So once a month, I was going over there, and I was doing a little open mic. And I thought that was what comedy was. I honestly had no perspective. There was not really YouTube or podcasting or anything. This was like 2006, 2005. It was 2005, actually. And it was just pre
20 years ago almost.
Exactly. Just pre-guidelines of how comedy could grow. So then when I decided to leave America because I couldn't find a good job, and that was kind of what was going on. I was looking for work and trying to do comedy, trying to take classes at the Second City in Chicago, and I just couldn't afford my life with the amount of money I was making. So I started looking for other options to make more money, and that's how teaching abroad came into my periphery. Like, I didn't even know those kind of options existed. And just by Googling and using monster.com, I found the job in Korea, took it, went over there. And I was in Korea for a full 6 months before I found Stand Up Seoul. And I found Stand Up Seoul by searching Meetup, or I think it's called Meetup or something like that on the internet, meetup.com. And there was a stand-up comedy group, and there was Brian Aylward and a guy named Todd. I don't remember, if you remember Todd. Do you remember Todd?
I don't know if I remember Todd. I don't know. Yesterday, though, was Brian Aylward's 18th year comedy anniversary. I saw on his Facebook post, so I was very excited. I was like, heck yeah, this founder of Stand Up Seoul.
That's him. And I found them on Facebook and on Meetup, and I just went to the open mic in Rocky Mountain Tavern and met Daniel Kennedy, and the guy Chris from Busan was there, Chris Tharp. And just met these guys. And,
nice.
Yes, and the Naughty Rooster. What was his name? Oh man, I can't remember these guys' names. Hirschberg. What was his name?
There's always a Naughty Rooster. Oh yeah, James Hirschberger.
James Hirschberg. Yeah, and they were doing the improv comedy rapping, and it was just like a whole vibe, a whole scene. And I lived 2 hours away in a different city, and I would take a bus to go do stand up in Rocky Mountain Tavern. And then you were there like a year later, right? Something like that. I was there in 2009, the beginning of 2009.
Yeah, and then I started stand up there in 2010.
There you go. And then once I started, oh, now there's people outside with their dogs. So here we go. And that's, that was when I went to Korea and started doing the open mics there. Before I found it, I really reserved myself to never doing stand up again. I thought I had left that life. I thought that just wasn't realistic and that it wasn't going to happen for me, even though I really loved it. So I went to Korea kind of abandoning the comedy dreams and just went out there to try to make money. So when I found it, and again, it went pretty well. The first show I had, that they booked me on another show and booked me on another show. And so it just kind of rekindled that dream that it was a possibility. And then, as you know, Stand Up Seoul blew up, and we were able to do shows all over, and we were able to tour, and we were able to make enough money to bring over headliners. And that just kept me going. And comedy was just kind of that. Throughout all my comedy career, it was always just one win. Oh, I was always one win away from quitting, if that makes sense. Like I was always like, I can't do this anymore. It's not worth it. And then something big would happen, and I'd be like, well, it looks like I'm still doing this. And then same thing, a couple of years go by, and I would get frustrated, and I wouldn't make any progress. And then something big would happen, and I'd be like, holy crap, I should keep doing this. And then they kind of just carried me through for the next 15 years, and then cut to 3 years ago when I left LA because I gave up on comedy again. Roast battle was going well and all this.
Oh, no.
I was just broke. I was just tired of being broke. So I kind of gave up on comedy again, went home.
Yeah, tell me about Roast Battle, though. You were crushing Roast Battle for a while.
Yeah, Roast Battle was huge. It was right when I was at this pivotal point where my career in veterinary medicine was going better. I was getting offered better jobs because I had just more experience. Obviously, as time goes by, you have more experience, you're eligible for better jobs. And I had this teaching gig that was such a sweet job. I had a brilliant schedule. My classes to teach were so easy. Like as far as my effort to actually teach, it was the content I knew very well. And then the money, I was making like decent adult money. I was making like finally in my life, like I could live on my own and I didn't need any help. So comedy was just kind of like, forget it. I was just like over being up all night, over spending money, over traveling and not getting paid. And then the roast battle, I was going to watch these shows. And if you've never been to a roast battle show, in the beginning, when it was the biggest show in LA, when it was a brand new concept, those rooms were electric. Like I'm getting goosebumps just remembering it. It was just energy to 1,000% and everybody going wild and everybody being into it in the most creative, cutthroat, nasty joke writing from the nicest guys that were just really brilliant writers, but they knew how to like dig deep and they knew how to like cut you and get reactions out of people and make the crowd feel sorry for people or, turn someone into a victim or turn someone into a villain. And it was just incredible. And I was just watching it thinking to myself, I could never do that. And that kind of leads over to the exercise part of this podcast. A lot of the reasons why I did any of these things is because it looked hard. And I know doing things that are hard make you a better person and make you more resilient and make you more able to handle other difficult things. So when I saw them doing roast battle and my first thought was, I can't do that. My next thought was, I better figure out a way to do that. Otherwise I'll regret it. I'll regret never trying. And I was friends with my friend Caesar, this guy Caesar, and he was a one who brought me to roast battle and he was my best friend. So we decided to roast each other and I won.
Yeah.
And that was,
screw you, Caesar.
Yeah. Forget Caesar. So we had this, the battle was close. It was really close. And he honestly was winning. Yeah. And then at the very end, he said something that the judges thought was like cringeworthy. So then they gave us another joke and then I won in the overtime. So it was like just a big surprise. And I was just elated, to have that victory because I thought I was going to lose. Go ahead.
Were all of your jokes did you write your jokes ahead of time or how much is written on stage or in the moment? How's that kind of work?
Yeah, I think it's case by case, depends on the comic. But for most of us, and I would say at the time, it wasn't that many people, we were all writing ahead of time. We would all know that we were going to roast somebody within a month or a week or 2 weeks. And some of the people were like, night before or a week before notices. But for most of my battles, I knew at least a month ahead of time. And before that, there were all the people that I knew I wanted to roast. So I would already start writing jokes for them before the shows would even get booked. because I knew that there was
Right.
a high likelihood that the certain people that were, winning were going to roast each other, and the people that weren't winning were going to roast each other, right? So we had this kind of a ranking system. So I knew I wanted to climb the ranks, and I would look at the people ahead of me and already start brainstorming jokes and going to their battles and seeing what worked against them and kind of using that as tools and guidelines and structures to help me write jokes. And it was a lot of also, collaboration. I was working with other writers and other
Yeah.
roasters and other comedians, and we would get together and have roast parties, and we'd all be helping each other write jokes. And it was actually a lot of fun before, like, prepping for
Did
the
it
roast.
build community?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. It made us feel like what we were doing was impacting the entire comedy community because they started popping up everywhere. The roast battles started popping up in every city in the country and in the world. They were doing roast battles in Japan. And I don't know about Korea. I'm not sure if they ever did it, but people were going to Japan, going to China to do roast battles, and Mexico and all these other countries. So we did see like a real impact and an influence. And, people online knew who I was because I was on, what was the website they were in? Periscope. Twitter had Periscope. And on Periscope, there was like thousands and thousands of views on all these roast battles. So people in the comedy community that were following knew us. So, you get that inflated ego. You think you're a celebrity. You think you're a star. And I thought I was on my way up. So I had won. Yes, exactly. I had won 8 roast battles in a row. I was 8-0. And at that time, that was unheard of. Nobody was able to get that kind of a record. But it didn't last that long. As soon as I got 8-0, then I started roasting the top guys, and they all beat me, even though it was close. Some of them were close, but I was super nervous in those main events. And that's something that I never really got over. Every time I was in a main event with celebrity judges and celebrities in the audience, I would choke, and I couldn't get past that, that fear, that stage fright. And stage fright is something I think every comic feels. But when it was like the bright lights and the big shows and the auditions and the producers in the audience, I always didn't have a good set every single time. That's something that I always struggled with. But they got me booked on a lot of shows. The roast battle record and being in those main events, I got booked on a ton of shows. No money though.
Nice.
No one ever paid us.
Yeah.
That was something that was universal across all my comedy experiences. No matter what echelon I made it to, no matter what next level I made it to, there was never any money involved. So that kind of got me.
So what do you think?
Go ahead.
What do you think is the thing you would have needed to do to get into that tier of more paid gigs? Is it a national credit?
I think having TV credits helps. Having, being a touring headliner helps. Being friends with touring headliners helps. But ultimately, I think it's just your star power. I don't think that I have the star power that some of those LA guys have. Just that, innate X factor that they could just be on, and they're naturally funny, and they're good writers, and they're good looking, or not, but they're some other attractive quality about them. You don't have to be handsome to be attractive. If you have a really good personality, great stage presence, positive energy, if you're really, really funny, suddenly you become attractive. So there was all these things.
That's what I tell myself.
It's true, man. You on stage is a different Rudy than off stage, as I'm sure is true for a lot of people. You shine up there. And that's something that I hope you see, that we all see.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, and it's because it's a different space. You're in the zone. That's right. Hopefully you're in the zone. You're trying to find that controlled flow, and when you're in that, especially in that roast battle space, you have to be moving. You have to be on your toes. You have to be able to take a punch and then deliver one right back.
Yeah.
And I think that's so cool, and I love the idea of this friendly competition. While it does appear cutthroat, and some of the jokes that I've seen on these roast battle clips that pop up still or whatever are gnarly and to the bone, people are still hugging it out afterwards. And I think that that's ultimately where it has to come from, because if you do a roast with somebody that you don't love, it's that can build some kind of friction for sure. I bet. Have you ever seen anything like that? Have you ever seen people break up in friendships or relationships or anything like that because of that?
Of course. Number one, I've seen friendships end. I've also seen relationships end. But that's not the norm.
Oh, no.
Normally, you become closer with the people that you roast. And that's true for me in every instance. All the people that I roasted, I think I had 10 or 12 maybe total roasts. And very
Hmm.
close friends with a majority of them, and the few that we weren't friends originally, we're definitely better friends now than we would have been if we didn't roast each other. And for the people that ended up having some
Mm,
negativity afterwards, I could have predicted that would have happened. Some of those people were pretty unhinged and using,
you could see it
using the
coming.
platform for the wrong reasons. I believe they were using the platform to try to
Right.
be mean. And I think for the most people that were good at it, they weren't actually mean people. They were just creative writers.
Totally. Do you know, were you in Korea when we did the Will Vince show?
No, I don't think so. It doesn't sound familiar.
Will's hilarious. He's like a heavy hitter. I think he trains in boxing, but he's from New York. He's at the Comedy Cellar all the time. He's hosting there. He's doing shows. He's touring across the world. He's so funny, and it's so great when you get to see those guys in like a stand-up soul setting, because it's like, oh yeah, that's what a professional comedian is. Like, that's how you do it for 40. That's what a punchline look. That's what an act out is. That's how you really control the crowd. That's how you maintain a persona on stage. But Will was hilarious. Will was so good, and I bring him up because he was roommates with Patrice O'Neill for years, and I'll butcher this story, but he told me this story about how people would always be talking to Patrice, always talking shit, always whatever, and like trying to get a rise out of him, and he'd barely do anything. But like, meanwhile, Will's his friend, and he's busting his balls all the time, and he's like giving him shit, and he's giving him a hard time constantly, and Will asked him about it one time. He's like, why do you do that, man? Why don't you even give those people attention? And he's like, I don't care about those people. He's like, those people don't mean anything to. I care about you. He's like, you're my roommate, you're my friend.
Yeah.
And so it's like, and however Will would tell the story, would be a million times better, but it just always stuck with me so much. It's one of those amazing things. Also, first of all, because Patrice is the friggin' goat. You
Yeah.
don't get much better than Patrice.
No.
And it was so cool to hear someone with that, like, oh, Patrice was my homie, and these are some of the words he's left us with. And so it, while I still don't love roasts, and we've done some around here, and they've left me feeling a little funky because Oregonians are the softest, downy, soft baby boys and girls you'll ever meet.
Mm.
But we love each other. And so when we try to do these roasts, it kind of hits, but you also have to take it in stride, because it's like, oh, yeah, I'm not going to make a joke about somebody if I don't care about them.
Yeah. No, I think it's not for everyone. It's not for every scene. And a lot of the jokes that I wrote, I kind of regret. And a lot of the jokes that people told me that
Uh,
didn't affect me in the moment later on, I think about it and I'm like, yeah, probably shouldn't let people joke about that about me. Just certain things that like, there should be some limits, especially if you do care about each other, especially if you do have respect for the person across from you. I roasted a guy and afterwards he did tell
mm-hmm.
me, he's like, I can't believe you said that. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, of all the jokes you could have said, why did you say that one? And I was like, because it got the best reaction. And he goes, well, that's probably not a good reason to tell that joke. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right, because we were friends. And it was a joke that was like not just
Yeah.
insulting him, but his family too. And I'm like, yeah, I shouldn't
Uh-huh.
have just told the joke because it got the best reaction. I should only tell the jokes that are actually the best jokes, regardless of the reaction. Because what I didn't realize is you're not just trying to impress the audience who bought a ticket. You're not really. They don't know anything about comedy. You're trying to impress the judges. You're trying to impress the producers. You're trying to impress the people there who are professional comedians
Mm-hmm.
who don't really care how big of a pop you get if the joke was hack, you know? And that was something that
Right.
I learned also. Like, you don't have to hurt someone's feelings to make a good roast joke. It doesn't hurt to do that, but it also depends on your own personality. So since I don't have like that in me to make fun of somebody's family, I shouldn't spend a lot of time trying to make it sound like something that I wrote or something that I care about or something that I'm into.
It's out of alignment with who you are.
Yeah,
And I think
absolutely.
that comes you feel it even in a roast, even though that's the place for it. If it's not, if you're like, ooh, I did cut a little close to the bone there. And you
Hmm.
don't quite know what those lines are until you're approaching and or crossing them. Like, went to Ireland once. I was at a bar, an Irish pub, and I was just bullshitting with a guy and his wife. And I forget whose age came out. it was something like he was 10 or 20 years older than her. And I made a crack about like, oh, I never would have guessed she was in her 40s or something like that, implying that he was in his 60s or whatever it was. And that wasn't okay. He's like, you never make fun of a man's wife or something like that. And I was like, I wasn't making fun of your wife. I was making fun of your age. And for some people, even approaching those subjects, bringing someone else into it is against the rules.
Yeah,
And you have to kind of fall on your face and stub your toe. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's something that, I use the excuse now if I were to ever do another roast that I wouldn't write jokes like that. And one of the reasons I felt like I started losing roasts at the end of my roast battle career is because I was trying not to write such mean jokes. And that's just an excuse. Who knows how it would have gone either way. But I did try to consciously shift my joke writing over to something that sounded more like me and less like other people, because it did become kind of formulaic in the end of the roast battle scene that I was a part of. It became extremely formulaic. You knew if you wrote these kinds of comebacks, if you wrote these kinds of replies, rebuttals, and these kinds of jokes, those would get the biggest reaction. And so everybody started kind of doing it the same way and kind of sounding like each other. So that was something that I also noticed is really likely to happen in any kind of booming, little trendy, viral scene, that people are trying to jump on the bandwagon and sound like the people that are winning. And that kind of doesn't work either, because then you become, what I think the problem with roast battle, and a lot of people have already said this, is that you spend so much time writing jokes that you'll never use again. So if you're not writing jokes in your own voice, you're kind of wasting the exercise.
Yeah, you want to make it from your perspective one way or another, but you're still writing jokes. I've worked through so many joke books and stuff where I've written 100 jokes and maybe used 2 of them. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's about making 100% of your writing, using 100% of the jokes that you write. It's about writing as many jokes as you can, falling on your face and polishing the ones that are still there for you.
Yeah.
Like, what roast battle jokes make you laugh? What roast battle jokes do you look at today if you peeked into your old notebook and you're like, oh, that was funny? You're like, fuck Chris,
Yeah.
But because that's your voice. That's your voice.
No, I can definitely go through, and I do this, I'm sure you do too, or maybe not. I go through my old joke books and I look at all the jokes and I can tell which ones that I wrote by myself and which ones I wrote with other people without having to, actually recall the moment it was written, just by looking at because it's cute. My jokes are cute. They're cute and funny. And I'm like, oh man, it's a good formula.
That's your voice, cute and funny? We're more alike than I thought, Albert.
Cute and funny. Well, I'm trying to be more Rudy-esque. That's always been my attempt to be more likable on stage.
Ah, look at that. Yeah, look at all these old notebooks. Oh my gosh. Like, I shudder to think about what's in all of these things. Like, these are probably, notebooks from the middle part of my comedy time. I've done comedy for about 13 years. Are you still on stage these days, or have you not done it for a while?
I've been on stage not that long ago. There's a comedy club here in Santa Rosa that wasn't here when I first moved here. When I moved here in January, no comedy club. And then in April, they opened a comedy club. So again, I moved to Santa Rosa to chase my veterinary career. I got a good job offer here and moved here to escape the distraction of comedy so I can focus on my career. Again, that didn't work because I'm walking down the street in downtown with my wife and boom, there's a comedy club that wasn't there 2 months ago. And it's like calling my name. I couldn't ignore it. So I did a couple of shows, got booked on a couple of shows, had some good sets, had some okay sets, had some not so great sets. And then I got frustrated because I was putting in so much effort and time and again, no money. And people were offering me, like I did a show and it went really well. And it was like a 10-minute set.
So you're in Santa Rosa. Santa Rosa, and you saw the comedy club. It called your name. I'd like to imagine this bright light emanating from the club, just sucking you in like a tractor beam. Like, that's comedy. That's what you're like. I was just one. You're fiending for it. You're like, I'm one set away from being on. It's, and you had to go back. You see a good mic. You're like, oh, it's a good mic. I'm back. Hi, everyone.
No, it was a great first like what would I say? I was like dating comedy again. That's how it felt. Like we were just back to
Uh-huh.
the dating part, where you're getting to know the
Yeah.
scene and getting to know the other
Yeah.
comics. But what's different is I'm 40 now. When I
Yeah.
moved here, I
Me
was
too.
39. I just turned 40. So the whole experience of starting over in a scene just frustrated me so much, like beyond what you could probably imagine. Maybe you can imagine because you've done it a couple of times, started over in a scene. But have you done
It's
it at
hard.
40? It's different. And being married and having a son who lives here with us, I just have a lot different perspective on what's important to me. So when the call came and I went to
Mm-hmm.
do an open mic, I had no expectation, right? I had written new jokes. That was something that I
Oh, I love
didn't
it.
want to tell jokes that I was using in LA or jokes that I was using on my last like shows I was doing. I
Why
wanted to
not?
write jokes. Because I didn't want any of them to look up any of my stuff and see old jokes or see the same joke
Okay.
twice. I didn't want
Yeah.
any comics to be able to be like, oh, he's been using the same material for blah, blah, blah years. Because I knew that I could do better than a lot of them immediately because I have a lot of
Mm-hmm.
experience. And
Yeah.
a lot of them are young, they're just young guys. And there's not
That's a
that big
really
of a scene here. Go ahead.
That's a really mature thing. That's using this external motivation to spark your internal flame. You're like,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if they've seen your jokes. You know what I mean? Like, I have a YouTube special. It doesn't matter if people have seen those jokes. They're not going to be like, oh my gosh, I saw him do that joke on the special. But it's a way to be like, no, those are jokes I've done. Those are jokes that I like and that work, but I'm challenging myself to get better. I'm challenging myself to do better than I did before. And
Yes.
so if you have paid gigs and you got to fill time, it's okay to do some older material if that's what you got. You're there to make people laugh. You're there to have fun. You're there to put on a good show. Do the best you can. And sometimes that includes old jokes. But when you're building again, when you're stacking the bricks up, you want to use some new material. You want to use
Yeah.
some new bricks. And it feels, oh my gosh, there's nothing better than like using new material in front of a hot crowd and it
Yeah.
goes well. Oh my goodness. Maybe
Yeah.
pinning someone on the mat. I know you have a wrestling background. Maybe a pin feels like,
Similar.
whew, feels pretty dang good. You're like, oh, I executed that perfect. I nailed it,
Well,
you know?
the pin is a little more selfish. Only you are getting something out of it. But when you get that big laugh from a new joke, like both people are winning. Like the audience and yourself. So it's like this double
Yeah.
positive sandwich.
Your crotch isn't on some random guy's elbow.
No, none of that. None of that crotch to face going on. Although I do enjoy some grappling, and you'd be surprised how many times I've asked a guy like, "Hey, you grapple? Grapple? You want to
Yeah.
grapple?"
Dude, I don't do you watch Rogan? Do you listen to the? I
Yeah.
don't watch a lot of Rogan, but the clips will pop up and they'll resonate. Our old buddy was on Rogan. I can't believe
Yep.
Sonny was on Rogan. That's so freaking
Mr.
cool. I love
Sunny,
that.
Sunny
Sunny
Side.
Side Up, best ever food
Hmm.
review show. We came up with Sunny and Soul. I
Yeah.
love that
Yeah.
guy. I'm gonna try to get him on the pod someday. We'll see if it
Yeah.
works.
Yeah, he's been
But
pretty good about keeping in touch over the years. And,
yeah,
I've always just reached out to him when he's hit a big milestone and he'll reply. And then,
yeah.
he was on the Rogan show. I was mentioned on the Rogan show. So he and I had something to bond over and I took
Oh
advantage
hell
of that.
yeah!
Yeah. I'm a
Oh,
big
when you were
Rogan
in the
Joe.
roast battles and stuff.
Yeah. I got a shout out on the
Nice.
JRE. And that was another like thing that kept me in comedy for a while. I felt like that was a win for some reason.
That's so cool. Yeah, I mean, there's been a few of the Korean friends, the Korean crew. Hans is blowing up. Hans Kim is blowing up. We met him in Korea 10, 12 years ago, something. And now
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, he came to Korea. That's where I met Hans Kim in Seoul years ago. He did some shows
Oh,
there. And then, so I've kind of talked with him over the years. And then he friggin' blew up. He lived in
that's
his
awesome.
van and he put in the work and he's opening for Rogan and that kind of stuff.
That's
And,
amazing.
and,
I knew he was Korean. I didn't know that he did some stand up soul. That's freaking awesome.
yeah, he was visiting family or something like that, and he went back recently. He was like, "Who should I talk to about doing shows in Seoul?" And so I gave him Sang's info and some other folks. So
Oh,
I
that's
think
cool.
he got some stuff together. Yeah, I mean, Hans was. It's so cool to see your contemporaries blow up. It's
Oh yeah.
awesome to see people do that, uh, and so I do like the clips pop up, and there was this MMA guy on there. I forget who it was, but he was talking about like the styles of training in the gym and how like sparring and wrestling in like Russia or MMA style fighting is like, no, you go to the gym every day and you're not going 100%. You're not going full bore. You're grappling, you're smacking people around, you're playing with your buddies, you're in that space, you're working on form, you're working on stuff, but you're not going all out all the time. And there's this fun aspect to it. And that's what I'm trying to kind of remind myself of and incorporate into how I train and how I want to train others, because I'm studying to become a personal trainer at the moment. And I really love supporting people on their health and fitness journeys, which is why I'm doing the podcast, because it's so fun, so interesting, and it makes you, it's the most immediate thing within most of our grasp. We can do something physically and make our whole lives better, essentially, just if we make a little space for it, if we take one or two steps. And that idea of play in the gym, that idea of like a playfulness, is so alluring to me, because that's what comedy is as well. Like, you got to be on your toes, you got to be ready to strike with the punchline, to nail a heckler, you got to be ready to pull up that old joke. And but it's not always necessarily planned. You're like, you have to prepare, you have to train, so when those moments arise, you're able to catapult into that space you need to be.
Absolutely. No, I was in preparation for this podcast, I was thinking of what I use from my old wrestling training in comedy, and a lot of it is that you don't use all of your energy when you're training. You don't go 100%. You're trying to get in reps. It's all about reps.
Mm-hmm.
Like in comedy, stage time, reps. How
Mm-hmm.
often are you up there? How much time? And if you're going 100%, you're more likely to get injured. You're more likely to, have bad form and not have perfect
Mm-hmm.
technique. And that's not what training is for. Training is to get your technique down and to enjoy it. You shouldn't hate it. But, I was never a top level elite athlete, because I have seen them go more to it, more of that intensity, because they have, like you said, a show coming up. They have a big gig
Mm-hmm.
coming up. So they got to have those tools extra sharp, and they can use, if they're a strong grappler, they should use their grappling. If they're a strong striker, they should use their striking. Like, if you have great old jokes and you're getting paid, you should probably tell them, instead of your brand new joke you wrote yesterday and haven't tried it yet. You could probably sandwich it in there if you're having a good show, but it's similar in that it's the repetitions. It's all about reps. It's all about keeping in shape, staying in shape, and not letting yourself fall out of shape, and not using a bunch of excuses to let yourself fall out of shape in comedy and in working out and in anything, physical or mentally, that you're trying to improve on. Anything that's improvable.
100%. And if you're going too hard too quick, or too hard too long, that makes it burnout and quitting so much more likely. If you start like guns a-blazing, like January 1st, new year, new me, you're like, I'm gonna do it all, and like you have a week of working out that you hate, like, that's not good for you. That's not why you're going to the gym. You're going to the gym to feel better. And if you hate every moment of it, if you can't stand the idea, I know I'm one of those sickos who loves the gym. I want to work myself to a pulp. I want to feel like nothing at the end of a workout, and I have to dial that back because it's not good for me. I'm finding that doesn't help me in the rest of my life the way I want it to. It doesn't lend itself to comedy the way I want it to. If I go all out for 2 hours at the gym at noon, I'm done by the end of, by the time a mic comes around. So I'm like, it's 8:00. I have to go out now. That sounds awful.
Yeah.
But if I'm like utilizing my time, energy, strength wisely, then I find like, oh, going out is a lot more doable. Working on that joke, working on those mics. Like, sometimes you go to a mic just to get in the space. I took a bit of a break this summer, and then I had a comedy festival, and I used that to kind of like get back in the headspace of comedy. It was fun. I saw my friends. I went out, and then I was going out super regularly for the next 6 weeks, getting ready, because I headlined Margaritaville last week, and it was 2 nights at Margaritaville is like a huge milestone, right? It was one of the first times I like, first of all, headlining Margaritaville, a conference room at I don't want it to sound like there was tons. It was like 60 people in a conference room at Margaritaville. It was a blast. Had so much fun. So thankful that I got to do 2 nights in a row at the same place. And I had never
That's
done
awesome.
that before as a headliner, and being able to do 50 minutes back to back. It's like, oh, okay, that's so valuable. That would be my dream job, is to be able to just headline 2 to 4 times a month over the course of, over weekends. That's what I would love to do, because I want to do comedy for comedy crowds. I want to do comedy for people who want to be there. And
Yeah.
you were one of the big inspirations for me too, because you were one of the first of my peers that I ever saw create their own comedy special. You did the same thing I did, essentially, which was just
Hmm.
you put your hour of jokes together, you produced a show, you got friends and family and community members to come to the show, you recorded it, you edited it, you put it out there. There's an
Yeah.
hour of Albert jokes in the world
Yeah.
that did not exist before you did it, and they exist because of you. And who cares if it's the best comedy in the world? Who
Right.
cares if it gets 1 million views? It's your comedy,
Oh
and
yeah.
that's meaningful, that's important. You
Yeah.
exist as a comedian,
It's true. And I was
and you're
inspired
funny.
by Adam Palmer. Adam Palmer had a comedy album. And I was like, I want a comedy album, like that's just the whole thought. And
Mm-hmm.
then what you don't realize, Adam inspired me. And so I put one out. And then I inspired like a whole generation of LA comics putting out YouTube specials. And every
I
single
love
one
it.
of those of my friends did better than mine, including yours. So I'm like,
Yeah.
that's great. I feel like that's fine. Like I was the latter. And people would come up to me and tell me, like, because of you,
Mm-hmm.
I knew it was doable or not a terrible
Yep.
idea. And I knew I could get more views than you. People would tell me. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. That's like a lot of reason why people do comedy, because they see somebody on stage that they think they could do better than. Like, yeah, that's
Right.
perfectly fine. And I think that it's a great, like, part of my story, my little legacy, that because of me, there's probably at least 5 or 6 other YouTube specials out there that might not have been.
So we have you to blame for a lot of this.
A lot of those YouTube comedy specials. That's Albert. That's all me.
But it's, I mean, it's, there was some quote from Nikola Jokic, the MVP center of the Denver Nuggets, just won an MVP title or an NBA championship and an MVP. Just such an amazing player, so good, and he's so weird. I love his approach. He's like, yeah, the NBA is my job. I'm kind of better than everyone without even trying. But he does try. He works his ass off. But mostly what he wants to do is go hang out with his horses. That's why I like him so much, because it's like
Yeah.
this giant man. But somebody asked him about how you get good. He's like, well, first you have to suck, and then you have to be kind of good, and then you have to fail, and once you fail, then you learn how to actually be good,
Yeah.
or something along those lines. And that's what it is. And I look
It
at all
is.
those comedy specials out there. You see 100 comedy specials on Netflix even, and some of the quality of specials on Netflix is amazing. I watched some of them, I just go bananas. Beth Stellings was awesome. I just watched Pete Holmes, Taylor Tomlinson, like so many people, Shane Gillis, so many people put out
Mm-hmm.
great specials in a year. But then you see a lot of specials out there and you're like, I could do that room.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
You see a
Mm-hmm.
lot out there, and it's like, it's the same thing with any kind of creative pursuit that has some kind of tangible uh thing at the end, whether it's a movie or a comedy special. You see them all out there. You're like, there's so many shitty movies out there. There's so many bad comedy specials out there. I could be one of those.
Yeah, I
I
could
could
add
be
my
one
name
of
to the list.
those.
Yeah, you could throw my name
Yeah,
in the hat of comedy specials nobody wants to watch. That's fine. It's fine.
exactly.
It's funny.
I
I go ahead.
no, you.
I listen to my own comedy special on a regular basis. It came out in 2016, and I probably listen
Yeah.
to it like every month or every other month because it makes me laugh. It's funny, and the jokes age well because it's my life. And there's
Yeah.
parts of the jokes that I wrote because I was going through something, and it
Mhm.
reminds me of that when I listen to it. And it's probably funnier to me than anybody else, and that's appropriate.
Exactly. You should be making yourself laugh. And
I
that's
do.
kind of an I do too. I think it's
Yeah.
annoying for some viewers. I can see how it'd be a little annoying watching from home or something like that. People uh don't love that, but I'm playing with the jokes. I'm telling the jokes. I'm writing the jokes for myself first of all. I'm writing the jokes for me. It's about my life, and so I still think it's funny. And sometimes I'm also laughing at like the audience response to it.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm like?
Oh yeah.
You'll
Yeah.
it's their first time to get to play with this dough, and you're like, here, yeah, it's a weird one. That's funky.
Yeah.
and and exposing yourself, I mean, obviously there's something really greatly rewarding about being honest in front of others.
Hmm. Yeah.
Otherwise we wouldn't do it. It's a super hard thing to do, but it's something we just can't get enough of. Obviously you've
Yeah.
tried to quit, you're like, I've tried to quit comedy, baby. Does your wife look at comedy like, like another woman, or you're putting down the bottle? You got to put down the mic, my man.
I don't. I think it's pretty hard for her to really rationalize my relationship with comedy. She's been there since my first show. So my wife and I have this like long history of a relationship, and she was there the first time I did comedy. She was holding the camera. So for
Really?
her, just coincidentally, we were dating at that time. Then we broke up, and then we got back together 9 years later. So in that
So
nine
you've known
years,
her for 15, 20 years?
I've known her for 18 years. 18
Oh, I didn't
years.
know that.
Yeah,
That's so
yeah.
cool.
In a side story, she's the reason why I went to Korea. I went to Korea because her and I broke up, and she started dating a dude that lived across the street from my mother. So I
Oh
would see
no.
them together, and it broke me mentally.
Oh
So I was like, I got to go
no.
as far away from this as possible, and I ended up in
Yeah.
Korea.
But she drew you right back to the States too.
She got me back. This is true.
That's
She was the one who got away, and when the window of opportunity opened back up, I jumped on it immediately.
That's so good. You've always loved hard, from
Yeah.
my experiences with Albert. You put your
Yeah,
heart
that's
into
true.
stuff.
No, I also think that I was trying to replace her. So that was a lot of what you guys are witnessing out in Korea. I was trying to find a replacement for that hole in my heart, and I
Yeah.
never found it until her and I got back
Uh,
together 9 years later.
Oh, that's so cute. That's so beautiful. You should write a script. Have you written jokes about you guys? Have you written
Yeah,
stories? Have you worked
yeah,
with that material?
yeah. I've told jokes about it, and I tell people it's like the Notebook, but with more tortillas, and just like weird little comments about how my relationship is special and it is like this really beautiful story, but I just use it to caveat into something silly. I try not to lean on it too hard because I feel like it's not as relatable as shitting on a marriage or shitting on a relationship. And that's fine. That's my own little cross to bear, that I don't want to talk about my relationship and make fun of it too much. I only want to say how great it is, which isn't as relatable or as funny. But I find ways to sneak it in, and I definitely tell people about it in real life. And it absolutely affects my comedy and my joke writing, because a lot of my jokes revolve around me being a married guy and how it's not
Mm-hmm.
bad. But as far as my relationship with comedy and going in and out, I think she sees me as like a ex-pro athlete that still has dreams of going back into the league, and it's not
Yeah.
too far from the truth. But in my mind, I'm like an athlete that's retired. I'm just too old. Like I can't do
Yeah.
what I used to do. I don't have the stamina. I don't have the endurance. I don't have the youthful factor that helped me in a lot of my comedy career. Just having the willingness to be social and make friends and smile at things I didn't think were worth smiling at, and being nice to people that I didn't think were good people. Like I don't do any of those things anymore. Like all those things I used to do as a kid, be friends with people that caused my life trouble, and hang out with
Yeah.
guys that I thought were awful human beings or ladies, and I just don't do any of that anymore. And it's just a
Yeah.
different animal. So for my wife, I think she sees me like I want to go back to the way comedy used to be, but I know that it'll
Uh-huh.
never be like that again. So everything that I do in comedy is more, I call it a hobby. I'm a hobby comic now. I'll get on stage,
Okay.
I'll write jokes. If one of my friends is in town, they'll book me on a show, and that's
Mm-hmm.
probably what I'll do for a while until something
Yeah.
changes.
You want to do it in a way that's fun for you. You want to
Yeah,
utilize it in for the good things. If you're kind of like, okay, I'm not like, you're like a former pro athlete, like you made it to double A ball is kind of
right.
how it's like for
Yeah,
most of us in our peer group. It's like we've made it. I got a cup of coffee in the big leagues last week, but that's
yeah,
like as close as it gets sometimes. It's like I
yeah,
shook Jeff Ross's hand,
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
those kinds of things are a big deal,
They are.
and they're important, and you should savor those. You shouldn't let them be like the only things, but they're important, and they keep you
Yeah,
going. You're chasing the dragon. You're still up
yeah,
there like, ooh, I got to get that high somehow.
yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, it's like I feel like I'm a double A ball player right now. I'm not a professional athlete. I'm not, but I'm like still doing it. I haven't
yeah.
quit. That's essentially you know what, my biggest comedy goal, the number one goal I have in comedy, don't quit. Don't
Yeah.
quit. Just keep doing it. If I don't quit, then I'll be okay. And sometimes to not quit, you have to put on the brakes. And that's what
Yeah.
I'm learning now in a way at age 40 that I hadn't learned before. I'm like, "Oh yeah, taking a week for myself where I don't bang my head against every open mic post, like, is good, is
Yeah.
okay, is helpful."
Yeah.
And so, like, for you, one of my as I want to help, I want to see people move towards goals. I want to see people take steps forward in whatever way that is for them. What kind of goals do you have moving forward, whether it's related to comedy or to health? What do you have in your sights, and what do you have any plans or steps
Yeah.
that are in place?
100%. So I turned 40 in September. So it was like, in the end of September. So it was like a month ago, a little bit more, a month and a half, maybe.
Represent.
Before I turned 40 and as I was turning 40, I made a mental decision to concentrate on my health much more than I have in the past. And I've never not concentrated on my health. I've always tried my best to eat healthy and exercise, and I'm not an exercise freak. I don't exercise every day, but I do exercise regularly. And if I feel
Mhm.
myself starting to fall apart, I'll exercise more to try to make up
Mm.
for lost sets, reps, whatever you want to say.
Listening to your body.
Absolutely. And I think it does come from growing up doing athletics, being a wrestler. I started wrestling at the age of 5, and I stopped wrestling when I was a senior in high school. I got injured. I had ankle surgery, and then I just wasn't the same anymore. And I just stopped wrestling because I knew I wasn't going to wrestle in college. So I started just
Mm.
focusing on my academics so I can get into college and not think about doing wrestling as a collegiate athlete. So from my wrestling days, you have that muscle memory I believe in a lot. I have a lot of muscle memory where my body knows what it feels like to be in shape. My body knows when I have bad posture. My body knows if my neck hurts or my back hurts, it's because my core doesn't have the strength that it used to. And I used to, rely on my youth and not do anything about it until it started hurting. But now I'm older and I've decided to get ahead of the game by really focusing on endurance, but not like I'm an endurance athlete, but more to challenge my mind to
Mhm.
keep going when I'm in pain
Mm.
physically, but I know that I can keep going. And it is like a David
Mhm.
Goggins thing I keep in my mind, and my wrestling coaches when I was in high school keep in my mind that to improve, you got to get out of your comfort zone, but you don't need to
Mhm.
suffer. There's that fine line where you're like, am I really tired or am I just making excuses? Do I need to stop right now, or can I go another half mile? Can I go another quarter mile? Can I go another 0.1 miles? And
Right.
every time the answer is yes. Like, yes, you can go another half mile. Yes, you can take one more step. And I believe that mental gymnastics that I'm doing as I'm suffering through a run or suffering through a workout routine, that telling myself in my head, yes, it hurts right now, but you've done this before and you can do way more than this. Let's
Mhm.
attempt. Let's attempt to get there. You don't have to
Yeah.
get there. And that's the new thing that I tell myself. You're not an athlete. You're not you're not performing right now. This is just for you. If it
Yeah.
hurts, stop. If it doesn't feel right, stop. You don't need to impress anybody. And I used to work out like I was going to the Olympics. I used to work out like I was back as a high school wrestler, thinking that I needed to win and needed to, outwork out the guy next to me. And it wasn't getting me anywhere. Kind of like you were saying earlier, it wasn't benefiting my overall health. It was actually making me not look forward to working out. It would make me like regret it. Like, oh, I'm about to go beat myself up. But now what I do is I
Mhm.
take it so lightly. I only do what I feel like doing. I make it very, I vary up the workouts so it's not so predictable. It's not so
Mhm.
mundane. I'm not doing the same kind of workouts every time. And if I
Yep.
don't feel like working out, I just do push-ups and pull-ups in my living
Yep.
room. And I have like a little thing that attaches to my door frame. And I'll do like yoga and just stretch instead of working out. And
Mhm.
I used to not count stretching as a workout, but now I do. Like that could be my whole workout. I'll stretch for an hour. I'll stretch for 2 hours, and I feel like it's worth it because also what I realize, which I'm sure a lot of athletes do, is the way I think while I'm working out is much more constructive and positive than when I'm not
Uh-huh.
working out. I tend to focus on what I can't do or what I'm frustrated with when I'm not working out.
R
But when I'm working out, a part of my brain is saying other people aren't doing this. The people that you're
Mhm.
working with that are causing you stress probably aren't trying as hard as you are to solve these problems. So just
Mm-hmm.
relax, let it go. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Only focus on what you can control, and you can control this
Right.
workout. You can control this progress. And you're asking me, like, do I have actual steps? Yes, I decided I want to run at least 30 miles every month. 30 miles
Oh,
every month.
nice.
So that's not necessarily a mile a day, but I can do, skip 3 days and then run 3 miles. And that's something that
Right.
I'm comfortable with because I don't have to run them fast. I can run them slow as long as I'm getting in the
Yeah.
miles and getting in the reps.
Do it.
And mostly it's for my mental health. It's more for that
Mm-hmm.
breathing exercise. I have to focus on my breathing. And then I'll intentionally start thinking about some issue I have, work related, almost 99% of the time. And then it'll help
Mm-hmm.
me work it out. It does. It works every time. It works every time. I'll have like a thought that I didn't have previously. I equate it to when I used to write jokes every day and I would be on public transportation where you're just in this
Mm-hmm.
like mental clear zone because there's nothing going on that's distracting you
Mm-hmm.
aside from your trip. And
And the blood's
it,
flowing, or you're doing something like you've kind
you're
of
up.
triggered it.
Yeah, you trigger that what do they call it, the muse. You call on the muse to help you get through
Mm-hmm.
a creative issue. And I believe a lot of my problem solving comes from creativity. Like I can have a creative thought to solve a problem that I don't believe my peers have in my veterinary career. They're a lot more linear thinking, and my thought
Mm-hmm.
processes are very much outside the box, and it comes from comedy. Comedy has made
Awesome.
me see that I can stretch my parameters, my limits of what's acceptable or presentable, and fix
Totally.
it and make it something that you can present to people that have a high bar, high standards for what's acceptable. And it doesn't come without risk. Sometimes, like you said, I get the egg on my face. I put my foot in my mouth, and I've said something that I shouldn't have said. But I've gotten
Mm-hmm.
better at that too. I've gotten better at
Mm.
like being around, like you said, the soft, very liberal, very, very, people that are easily offended or very, very sensitive. I'm working
Mm-hmm.
in animal medicine. You can only imagine the sensitivities that exist around sick, dying, injured animals and the people that want
I
to work with them.
bet.
So
Yeah, you're around
there's
a
a lot
lot
of
of
it.
high emotions.
Absolutely, 100%. But it's not too different than being an athlete, where there's a big highs and big lows. It's not too different than doing comedy, where there's big highs and big lows, and a lot of people watching you. That's the point of sports. There's
Mm-hmm.
people watching you fail. And when you're doing comedy, people are
Yeah.
watching you fail. When I'm performing medicine, I'm not ever by myself. There's people there. There's doctors, there's other nurses, and the stakes are high. There are high stakes, and
Mm-hmm.
some would say higher than comedy. Obviously, me doing comedy was always a lower level of stress than when I was working in surgery. That's working in
For
surgery is way
sure.
higher stress, but it's similar stress where I just don't want to fuck up. I'm sorry,
You're
are we on
fine.
a
It doesn't
PG
matter.
podcast?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Just making
Say
mistakes at
whatever.
certain levels is less than okay. Like in some
Yeah.
positions, in some parts of life, it's okay to make mistakes, and sometimes it isn't. And that's what I
Yeah.
what I like to know about everything that we do in life. Everything as humans, everything as adults, everything as people that want to get better. That you have to realize some things are really important and some things really aren't. And although
Right.
something might seem important, like a show, you do a show in front of everybody and it doesn't go so well, but then you do another show later that does so well, and all the jokes you wanted to tell you told and they all killed, and that feels so much better than a show that didn't go well, that you were like just going through the routine. And that's
Mm-hmm.
something else that, now, like you said, those little wins, like I try so hard to remember those now because I'm like,
Yeah.
just trying to remotivate myself through every little struggle. Like, okay, you can do big
Mm-hmm.
things. You can perform at a high level. You can have a lot of eyes on you and still do a really good job, and regularly, predictably. And so much so that my
Mm-hmm.
friends still book me on shows, even though they don't need to, they don't have to, but they know that I can do well, and not just do well, but do well and be influential or impact the show, like improve the show overall.
Yeah. Yeah. You can do. You're still ready to perform, and I guess are you working? I know you used to teach veterinary medicine. Are you still teaching, or are you working with clients and their animals?
I am no longer teaching. I am a director at the Humane Society. So I
Oh.
manage the veterinary department. So that's the medical
Oh.
department, the shelter department, the community vet clinic. So we have 3 programs in our department. And one
So
of them is
cool.
we do spay neuter. One of them is we do low cost veterinary care for the community. And the other one is our shelter animals. It's a humane society as a shelter. So we have our shelter animals. And I manage the whole team. So I manage a couple of doctors, a bunch of nurses, a bunch of veterinary assistants. And then I'm an RVT, a veterinary nurse. So whenever they
Uh-huh.
have low staff or somebody calls off or they're just, their caseload is high, I'll pop in and help them. And then I will train some new people, but I have trainers that's their job to train.
Mm-hmm.
But I still teach, I still train in the moment when I'm there, when
Yeah.
I'm working with the young new people. But it's
You
not
do a
my
variety.
main. Yeah, my main goal is operations. I'm there to make efficiencies.
Cool. Yeah, I remember when I took my cats into our old family vet, he to get them spayed and neutered. They're 3 now, but I helped him. I like held my cat's nards or something with a
Wow.
scalpel or whatever. He's like, "Yeah, just hold that right there and I'll pop out these they looked like edamames or whatever." And I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever done is help my vet cut off my cat's balls.
It's pretty cool.
I was just so stoked, and it just felt so good and so cool and so out of my comfort zone to do something like that. So you're as somebody who has so much experience like in high stress situations, I'm sure people really appreciate having you there. I'm sure that those skills that you've gotten from performing have really lent themselves to working with animals. Does that track?
Absolutely. And I think it's with anything where you've been under high pressure and you care a lot. Some people are under high pressure for a job, but they don't have anything invested. Like I'm a huge animal
Mm.
lover. Huge. Like it I think
Mhm.
about it constantly. It affects everything I do in my life. It's why I'm here. And I
Yeah.
believe other people I work with have the similar kind of relationship with their job. So that caring and that high level of stress is what I can relate to comedy because we really love it. We really want to do a good job. We're not just there for the for S and G's. We're there for improvement. We're there to get our jokes out. We're there to express ourselves. We're there because we love it and we want to see the other comics too. It's not just all about us. And I think that's what it's like for me there. So there is that overwhelming gratitude I have for my team because I can't do it
Mm.
without them. The overwhelming gratitude for anybody in the world that takes that step to get into animal welfare and animal medicine because it's extremely difficult. It's very difficult and it doesn't pay very well. So for the people that have used their life skill, mind, hands, eyeballs to come help me help animals means everything to me because you're not just helping one. What I see in veterinary medicine, as soon as you teach somebody, you're not just helping one animal, you're helping like millions because that one person is going to
Mm.
help a bunch and then teach people and they're going to help a bunch. So every
Mhm.
person I teach a skill or every time I get somebody from a level 1 to a level 2, I know that I'm impacting like the animal world and that makes
Yeah.
me feel really good. And kind of similarly, when I was doing comedy at a high level, I felt like we were impacting like this huge wave, this butterfly effect of how it's affecting things. And that's always been my end goal. You're talking about plans and what I want for my future is to just have as much positive impact on the world as possible. And
Mhm.
I'm not the type of person that thinks like, oh, I just want to impact my family unit and the people that I have the same last name. Like, no, I think big. I dream big. I want to
Mm.
impact like millions, billions. I want to help a billion animals in my life,
Yeah.
even if it's indirectly. And I feel like that's what allows me to be not comfortable in uncomfortable situations, but being comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think that's also a
Mhm.
sports thing. Like when I was
Mhm.
doing sports as a kid, you're always, stepping up to the mat and your heart is pounding. You don't know what's about to happen. You're like a one-on-one gladiator. And the same thing in comedy. You're just you against the audience. It's like a
Mhm.
one-on-one sport. And there's a lot of eyes on you. And when you're working directly with an animal, it's like a one-on-one thing. No one can help you. You're on your own.
Mhm.
And that's something that I thrive on. And then I also thrive on making mistakes publicly. I think I
Oh.
do that better than a lot of others. I can make a mistake, people can see it, and I'm just like, I hope it doesn't happen again. I can learn from my
Yeah.
mistakes and
You
just
fuck up so well, Albert.
I'm a professional fuck up.
That's all.
I'll
That should
take it.
maybe be the name of comedian. Professional fuck up.
I like it. It's not terrible, and
Well, that
It translates to everything. Go ahead.
100%. I don't think your jokes get better unless they fail some of the time. Like, you have to figure out how to make them work. And I think, well, going back to what you were saying about impacting others is something I've always noticed about you is you have that service mindset. You have that desire to serve others. And I don't think everybody has that in the comedy world. So many people do get in it purely for egotistical reasons. And that's what kind of comedic, perspective doesn't resonate with me, is somebody who is in there and you can see just ego. I want to have fun. I'm in there to have some laughs with you. I'm in there to create a good experience. And comedy is like types of medicine in that it's preventative medicine. The gym
Oh
and
yeah,
comedy are preventative medicine. If you think
that's
about
awesome. Yeah,
you get in that room, you're laughing with 50 strangers at the same pain. That is medicine. That is magic. That is something in the air that will never happen again. And if you allow that to be greater than yourself, it's so much more rewarding. It's the closest thing to church you get, right? And
yeah,
as up
absolutely.
there, we get to be there helping people. Well, the closest thing to church is actually going to a professional sporting event with 20,000 screaming fans.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, when I
yeah.
went to the
No,
Portland Trail Blazers playoff game, I couldn't, like, oh my God, it's like
that's a
you
religious
feel
experience.
you're floating in that arena with everybody there. It's amazing. And
Yeah, that's
comedy
amazing.
gives that same experience. I'm sure I say this all the time. I've had a friend who came to a show in Korea at the Renaissance Hotel where we put on shows with all these comedians. And he was like, I've been all over the world, but I've never had a night quite like this. And it's just such a cool thing to think about. Somebody who's done so many things, and yet a comedy night, just sitting in a room laughing at jokes, can be some of the biggest, most impactful moments that you have. It can make your day, week, month, year if you
Year.
go to an
Yeah,
amazing show. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Oh
Oh
my
no,
gosh.
what we have seen and been able to do is pretty magical. Like miracles that we in our life have seen. Just you and I putting on these
Yeah.
shows with our friends in Korea and people showing up and us getting big laughs and us like really feeling like comics, but we were in a foreign country,
Mm-hmm.
like that's unbelievable. And that
Yeah.
experience really, like I can keep that memory of Stand Up Soul and probably be satisfied for the rest of my life with everything I've done comedy wise. That
Mm-hmm.
was something to me that I needed at that time that I don't
Yeah.
really need anymore. I don't need
Mm-hmm.
that validation anymore like I needed then, to just know that I am a person that can impact in the way that I want to impact, and that I'm not
Mm-hmm.
reliant on where I came from or my family or what other people can do for me or how I grew up or what other
Yeah.
resources that I had available to me, because when you are around where you grew up, and to take that show on the road like we did and to get those responses like we did, and for me to see you having fun on stage and telling jokes that are just completely silly, completely like irrelevant stuff, but to get
Totally
the
irrelevant.
audience so into it and so happy. And I would see the audiences just being lost in your comedy, our comedy, because we were providing something for them that they couldn't get anywhere else. And it was like just a we were so lucky. We were so
Yeah.
lucky to be able to do that, and the timing was right, and the group of us was
Totally.
right, and the motivations were right, and those are
Yeah.
something like that just isn't going to happen to me again. It's just not,
Yeah.
and probably won't happen to anybody ever again. Stand Up Soul's not new anymore.
Yeah, it was extended summer camp for us in many ways. We got to do all the fun things together and the hard things together. We had to put a lot of work into the camp
Yeah,
counselors have to work hard to
yeah,
make that a fun experience for everybody. And so it was so special that we did get to do that. And I told Matt Schmidt, another good friend of ours, someone that just recently moved back to the States from a life abroad, and he's in my neck of the woods, and we're good friends, and I'm training with him some of the time, and we're talking, and he's coming to Mike's now and then and stuff like that. He's like, "Oh, me, you, and Albert got to get together sometime as well." So it's like these formative moments are more important than you realize, I
yeah,
think is it. So like whatever step you're on in your journey, and I'm still in an early, young, middle step, it's like I can do some things, but I can't do a lot of things. But whatever step you're on, I think the main point is just be on that step. Enjoy it. Don't rushed to everywhere. Like you you have so little control over so much. Control what you can control. Take the next step in front of you. Sometimes it's a mic, sometimes it's the gym, sometimes it's writing a joke, sometimes it's just watching a comedy special, sometimes it's reading a book, sometimes it's going for a walk or petting your cat or doing whatever. But whatever that next step is, take it, and hopefully you can find some kind of joy and presence in it. Because I think that's ultimately the biggest gift we can give anyone is our presence. If it's authentic and it's there to just be who we are with whoever is there with us.
100%. 100%. I think the whole takeaway is just like you're saying, being present and enjoying the process. And it's so cliche, you hear it all the
Yeah.
time, enjoy the process. It's not about the journey, it's about the next step. And it's just so true for everything, because you're going to gloss over the part that you were supposed to be enjoying because you're looking for the next thing.
Yeah.
And it's for everything. And I think just like whatever you're going to do next, and especially if it's in health or in comedy, the you have to be all in. You have to be all in, and that's something that I think that is inescapable. If you're 1 foot in the door and 1 foot out the door, it's going to be impossible to get to where you want to be. So you just have to make tough decisions about what's really important to you and try to stick to it. Try to stick to it. Stick to your
Totally.
plan. Don't make excuses. And 1 foot in front of the other is a real thing. 1 step at a time, like they say. It's a real thing. And for all those parts of my life that I didn't realize how great they were until later, that's the only thing you can really regret, that you weren't enjoying the moment. But I think we've been pretty good at it. We're not like lost. I never got too in the weeds of forgetting why I wanted to do comedy in the first place. But it was always for me to just express myself honestly. Like you said, try to be honest in public, try to be honest to strangers. And that's a skill. That's a skill that gets me everything. It's 100% why I was able to get married and stay married, because I'm not chasing this ego. I am who I am. I like who I am. I'm always going to be this way. And comedy put me in that place. And I think I was able to, do well in comedy because I did come from a competitive sports kind of background where I knew working harder gets you further than the people
You have to have an
behind you.
edge.
You have to have an edge. You have to put in the time. You have to put in the time and be 100% sure this is what you want. And other than that, it's always going to be like kind of jogging in place. And right now, this is something that is probably not for everybody, but focusing on my marriage is my 100% priority right now. Comedy helps me be a better husband. Exercise helps me be a better husband. Having some career goals and general ambition helps me be a better husband and father. And I think all that just makes me a better person and role model. And it all comes together. You can't not take care of yourself and think you can take care of others. It doesn't work that way.
Totally. Priorities change, and I think being okay, like being honest with yourself about what your priorities are, and then being non-judgmental with yourself about that. Like comedy taking a step or two down is 100% fine. I love comedy. We've just talked for an hour about how much it's benefited us, but sometimes it's not the number one thing. Like I'm trying to start 2 new jobs as a podcaster and as a personal trainer and continue comedy. Like doing all this stuff. It's not like comedy is always going to, well, for some people it is. For some people it's going to be the number one priority. But seeing how comedy fits into your life, I think is part of why I want to have these conversations with people and see how we can do that in a balanced way, in a way that is healthy and safe and welcoming to ourselves and to others, because it doesn't always feel that way. It is easy to get stuck in the drama or the I'm not getting this, or why am I not getting booked, or that kind of stuff. I don't get booked a lot. You know what I mean? Like I'm not on a lot of shows in this smaller town, and that's just life. That's how it goes. And so I'm still, but I'm not quitting. It's like I might put on the gas. I'm just learning how to use the gas and the brakes more. I think that's essentially what I'm learning these days. So we've gone all over the place, and there's so many things that I had other ideas. I had running facts because you're a runner. I know but we didn't necessarily get to those. I got one or two. Here's a running fact. I'll hit you with some running facts before I kind of ask you for your final thoughts and some reflection a little bit more. Did you know running was called pedestrianism in the 1800s? Oh, those
No.
I love how pedestrian is used as like an insult now. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
he's very pedestrian.
He's so pedestrian. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you mean he can walk? What a fucking dork.
You mean he's mobile? What a
Oh my
loser.
gosh, he's not riding in a chariot. And it was used in the 1800s, so I bet it's people on those damn horses. They're like, pedestrian, loser.
Get out of here, peasant.
I read that, so if you were having a tough day, you need to increase your productivity. Doing a short run at work can increase productivity by 23%. So
23%,
when you're,
Michael Jordan.
yeah, Mike MJ, baby, you grew up in the Midwest. You were in the heyday of Michael Jordan. I was a
Yeah.
Blazers
Yep,
fan,
yep.
so you were so happy when I was just crying as a young boy.
Probably, yeah.
You were like, the Bulls are the best.
They were, and it followed me to Korea. I went to Korea. I'm like, oh, I'm from near Chicago. Oh, you know Michael Jordan? Like, I don't know him.
I've heard of the guy.
Of
him. Yeah, exactly. Here's one that I thought was crazy. Before 1980, medical science prevented women from joining marathons because they thought it tore up uteruses. What? It just shows how stupid medicine is. Like, it can be so wrong for so long. It's like, oh yeah, women can't run because then they couldn't have a baby.
As the doctor's smoking a cigarette,
like
blowing it in the baby's face.
Oh, you'll probably appreciate this one. In the 1960s, police used to stop runners. Like, you couldn't run in public because they thought it was suspicious activity.
I had a joke like that. Like, I can't just run anywhere, you know?
Yeah.
Some places would be like, well, I wonder what he just did, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it is a thing about running, and you don't look like a runner. You know, if you're not wearing the proper attire, it does look suspicious to anybody. To me too. I see somebody running in like sweatpants and a t-shirt. I'm like, wonder if something just happened to them, or are they exercising? I don't know.
And it gets people in serious trouble still to this day. Like, you know what I mean? It started a riot in half of the country. Jeez Louise.
That's right. The jogging guy, I remember.
Yeah, fucking hey. Have you done a marathon? Have you ever done a marathon?
I've not, but I've been toying with the idea lately because I told you I'm trying to increase my running just because I feel like it's good for my mental health. And of course, my cardiovascular, I know, is going to be an issue later in life. So I'm trying to make sure I don't have a heart attack at the age of 50. So I want to do the marathon just as a challenge, but I haven't yet. No.
Buddha Singh completed 48 marathons before the age of 5.
What?
Before the age of 5? It's some kid from India. But this is insane. He started at 3 years old running marathons, and he completed 48 by the age of 5.
Did he fall through the first one?
I saw this
His
on a
mom pushed him in the stroller, maybe.
He could. There's so many. Like, how would a kid even do that? Why would they keep doing that? That seems insane to me.
I don't know. It seems like maybe borderline child abuse. Unless this kid is, there's some prodigies. Some kids are just born to run. Who knows?
They're ready to run. Well, I'm not a runner. I do not love running. I don't love how it feels on my hips, knees, and ankles. It's just not. I'm about 180 pounds ish, and it's just never worked super well for me. So I also want to put in some stats that 40 to 50% of runners experience yearly injuries. So I just want every runner to know that you're gonna hurt. You're gonna feel bad. It's not gonna be great the whole time. And same thing with lifting. You talked about getting older and just like doing stretching and mobility. I kid you not. I'm just like so into stretching. I talk to strangers about stretching. I will be like I stretched this morning. I try to figure out more ways to get stretches in, just because I want the energy to flow through my body. And I don't think that we're listening to our bodies enough. And stretching as a 40-year-old, like just moving a little bit, just doing a little bit, it can make a world of difference.
Oh yeah. No, it's so I don't know. It's just like, it feels great. It feels like I'm almost cheating. Like I'm just like, how can this feel so good? And it's so
Yeah.
necessary, but you're like laying there.
Yeah.
It feels like cheating, but it is, I don't know. I'm more in love with it than ever, but it's kind of been progressing, as I've
Yeah,
gotten older. The stretching
totally.
has just become more of a priority in my workout routine.
Yeah, I love it.
I
Same.
used
Me
to like
too.
stretch to go run or stretch after running, but now I just stretch all the time, like
Yeah.
regardless.
Yeah, no, I'll stretch just instead of doing something for sure.
Yep.
I totally love it. All right, Albert. Well, I let's do this again sometime. I'd love to
Yeah.
catch up. I think part of the fun of talking about goals with intention is checking in on people later as well to see how they're doing. And so let's do it again. My goal is to do a show a week for a year and see what happens at the end of that.
Yeah,
So
man. Definitely. I would love to
let's
be a
let's
regular.
stay in
This was a lot of
touch.
fun. Definitely. Thank you, man. Really appreciate this time.
I love it. And so the last question I'll ask you before kind of signing off is if you could give your beginning self, your early comedy Albert, any advice, anything to keep in mind, what is the thing that you would tell him and or wish he knew when he started?
I would give myself one solid piece of advice. Go home after the show. Don't
Why?
don't spend all your money and time drinking and hanging out and doing all the things that didn't benefit. And I had a ton of fun and made a lot of
Mhm.
friends, but I definitely destroyed my like liver and my body and a lot of hangovers and just wasted other parts of my life. Like I went all in on comedy and just kind of abandoned everything else because I was sure I was going to make it. And I wouldn't
Mhm.
do that going back. Go back, I would be more of an adult and not like trying to be the starving artist like I was
Y-
comfortable with being then, but I learned like that's not me. Not me. I was
Right.
trying to be somebody that I wasn't. So that's
Yeah.
the only thing that I would change. Like these days I don't like going out. I don't want to hang out. I
Uh
don't want to have a beer after the show. I want to finish my set and go home and hang out with my wife. And
yeah.
if I could do it all over again, I just would have focused more on my overall well-being
Yeah.
as opposed to just chasing comedy as a dream without any
Yeah.
realistic steps and a plan and all the things like I should have leaned into the podcast a little earlier and leaned into
Mhm.
the veterinary medicine part of my life a little earlier and just
Mhm.
hindsight is 2020. There's just so many things that I waited too long to realize because I was focused on like a popularity contest. I thought being friends
Mhm.
with people was my ticket, my gateway. And it was temporarily, but it doesn't carry you the rest of the way. You have to have that real consistency and discipline that I didn't have.
Yeah. No, I love it. And I think that that's pretty common theme among comics who would talk to their younger selves so far is kind of take it
Yeah.
easy. You like don't
Yeah.
focus on the partying as much. That you can go hang, have fun, but be good to yourself and figure out where comedy fits in your life. Don't make it your life is kind
Yeah.
of what it sounds like. And you
Yeah.
know what? You kind of also have to be obsessed with something for a while. If you want to get really good at it, you have to you got to put 2 feet in. So if you love it, do it, but also like we've been in do it yourself scenes our whole or I guess you haven't. You've been in LA, you've been in places, you've been in the grind.
Yeah.
But in these smaller scenes, it's like it takes a lot of work to put on shows and to do things and to make it happen. So be kind to yourself and don't talk trash to yourself all the time if you're
Absolutely.
not doing
Yeah.
X, Y, or Z.
Yeah. I love
So
that big thing in my older life now. Well, my whatever 40-year-old life is the scissors. Do you know about the scissors?
tell me.
So you can cut yourself some slack. Like anytime you're around a friend or a family or a buddy and they're like being hard on themselves, you hand them a pair of
Mm-hmm.
scissors. If you don't have a pair of scissors, you give them the fingers and you say,
Yeah,
man, cut yourself some slack. You're doing great. Look how far you've made it. And I have to
I
talk to
love it.
myself like that.
I love it. I did a bit about that very thing last night. How would we talk to our friends the way we talk to ourselves? And I'm trying to make it funny. It'll get funny one of these days.
Yeah, I bet it will.
Well, Albert, you are a delight. I'm so excited that we got to catch up, dude. It makes me so happy. to reconnect with you. You've been a big part of my comedy journey throughout the whole time, and I want you to know that, and know that I appreciate you and all that you have done. You've always been a hard worker, somebody who has also made me laugh many times. You're willing to put in the work, and you're willing, and you want to do it, I think, for the right reason. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate you being here. And
thank you, man. Right back at you. All the same stuff, really. Been a big part of my comedy life, and I follow you. I watch you. I wish you nothing but the best. I know anything that you put your mind into, you're going to do so well. You're just a very special person. And I know I'm not the only one that tells you that, but your effort, your heart, your mind, you're very smart. You're super intelligent. So I know you can get there, but it's hard. And it's just like you said, you can't quit. Don't quit.
takes work. It's you, Albert, and my mom. So I appreciate I appreciate that support, truly. And I thank you a lot, and we'll catch up soon, okay?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely, man. Thank you. Thank you so much. And we'll
Duh.
just hit me up anytime.
I love it. Okay. We're going to say goodbye, but don't log off.
All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you for listening.
Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. Not jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. With Rudy Tyburczy.